Hello and welcome to our demo. I'm Vladi Gubler, I'm CTO of Infowise, and today we're going to talk about Ultimate Forms and what it can do to help you build your business applications, business solutions using your SharePoint as a platform. So what is basically Ultimate Forms? Ultimate Forms is a platform on top of your SharePoint that extends the built-in capabilities of SharePoint, allowing you to build any type of business solution using just your browser. I'm talking anything from a simple vacation request system to advanced HR, project management, and CRM systems. So basically, Ultimate Forms covers all the aspects of building a functional business application. It has capabilities in terms of forms, where it would extend the built-in forms of SharePoint to give you the capabilities that you would need for an actual business application. It will also provide you a functionality to implement your business logic, the things that happen behind the scenes when you do something in your forms. And the third category would be reporting, which is basically visualization of your data using charts and so on. So let's start with the first category, which is forms, and just progress from there. So the first thing basically that people want when they start using SharePoint is basically to make their forms look nicer. You've all seen basic SharePoint forms, just list of columns one on top of the other, not very intuitive, not very designed. So the first thing, before even we talk about creating new functionality, we talk about how can we make the forms look nicer. Okay, so my first example would be exactly that. So what I did here, I basically took a regular SharePoint list, a context list, without even adding a single column to it, and I just designed the forms to look a little bit nicer. So let me click on one of the items here. So what do we see here? So the first thing that we see here are these tabs. So I was able to group my columns here by topic. It's it's a lot easier to navigate the form now, instead of having this long list of columns, just having you scroll down to reach the bottom. So the next thing that we see are obviously the colors. So we have the background colors, we have borders, we have even a drop shadow here. And then what we see is the layout itself. So we have two layout columns. So we have all our columns arranged in these two layout columns. We have a section header here, and we have this title above. If I go to the edit form, you will see that the design is preserved, and I can also see that my descriptions were hidden behind this little help icon. So instead of having my description clutter my screen, I can hide them away. So let's just jump right into how we do something like that. How do we start implementing a form? Okay, so what we added here is this new button on your ribbon called Design. So click on it, and what we see is the main page of Ultimate Forms. That's where you start and dive deeper into all the specific functions. So what we see on the right hand side first, so at the top we see some quick start guide. How do you start building your first form? And here you see links to all of our blog articles. We have more than 150 different blog articles that explain functionality, give you step-by-step instructions and walkthroughs and so on. And it keeps being updated all the time. And the stages are just another way of looking at the forms. So on the left-hand side, that's where the functionalities are. So you can see all the features of Ultimate Forms, and just click on one of them and start editing everything directly with your browser. So let's start with the first feature that we're seeing today is the tabs. So let's click on that. So that's where you actually design your form. So you see the three tabs that we saw earlier. Once we've added our tabs, we can associate our columns with those tabs. So we basically select from this long list of all the columns available in the form, and we just double click on them and add them to the right hand side, where we can rearrange them. We can add section headers, blank rows, and so on. We can also add something that we call fragments, which is basically free text and HTML that you can, and pictures that you can just embed in your form in description or just something design wise. Okay, so we done that. So next thing, I'm gonna skip permissions for now. So the next thing I want to talk to you about the general settings. So the layout, we can do the layout in terms of tabs or stacked groups. This is where the title above the form appears. And here we also can assign themes to our tabs. We can specify the location of labels, descriptions, and the number of layout columns. Under style, we can specify styling for our form. You can use this pre-built settings for common things, but you can also override any of the CSS classes on your own. So for example, what I did here, I also used some CSS styles that are already on the form. I just did a little override on them, but you don't have to. It's obviously enough to just use this section right here if you're not very familiar with CSS, but the ability is there. Okay, great. So that's basically just the design of the form. That's not why people buy a product, of course. So let's just jump into something a little bit more functional. So the first thing that I want to show you is the purchase orders. So you understand that purchase orders are something that is very hard to implement using just SharePoint. And why is that? It's because of the relationships inside the purchase order. Each purchase order can have multiple line items. So we have this single to multiple relationship that we need to implement. Like in InfoPath, you would implement something like that using repeating sections. What we did, we basically did something similar, but inside SharePoint, inside the regular SharePoint form, without having to replace them with any custom built forms or solution that is not 100% compatible with the SharePoint look and feel and functionality. So you can see here that the repeating sections, this line items, are listed under the items column. The way we implemented it, it's basically two lists. This is the main list where the purchase order itself resides, and there is a secondary list for the line items, and we create and maintain this relationship for you. So each one of these items is actually a complete regular SharePoint item that can have its own metadata, can have its own version history, can have its own permissions, and so on. You can even view those items and manage them separately from their parent. Another thing that we have here is the ability to calculate totals based on those related items. It can be count the numbers, it can be total average, and so on, and that is done completely automatically, so you don't have to worry about it. Whenever you change, for example, a price on this item, it will automatically update the subtotal and the total for the parent form. Now you can even do conditional calculation. For example, for this project, only count the number of currently open tasks. Whenever you close the task, it will obviously go and update that item, and then you can have validation rules. For example, prevent closing the project when there are still open tasks. Okay, great. So another thing that you can notice here is that we're also using tabs. But in this case, we're not just using tabs for the purpose of a layout, but we're also using tab for something different. So this approval tab actually has a different set of permissions assigned to it, so only specific people can edit the columns on this tab. So in this case, only managers can then approve. So let me show how it works. For example, I'm going to open up this item for editing. So what you're going to see is the first tab is read-only, although we're in edit mode. So we have the ability to have permissions on each tab. The second tab is also read-only because this form has already been approved. If I go and I open up another form for editing which hasn't been approved yet, take this one, you will see that the first tab is still read-only, but the second tab is already editable. And again, if we go into the list settings and click on design, and again click on tabs and tab permissions, you will see that under permissions here for the first tab, it's writable in the new form, and it's read-only in the edit and view form. So basically you can only enter information into this form when it's still in its new form. If I switch to approval, a little bit more complicated. So it's hidden in the new form. It's read-only in all the other forms unless you are an administrator and the approval has not been given yet. So you can easily assign permissions to this form on the level of each tab or even in individual column, and it would change its functionality and appearance based on that. So the permission rules can be based on who you are, on the type of form, and on conditions. So you can have multiple conditions as well. Okay, so let's go back into our purchase orders. So let's try to create a new one. So I click on new item, and you see here that I have the supplier and the contact person for the supplier. Notice that the approval tab is gone. So by selecting the supplier, I'm actually filtering the list of available available contact persons, like so. Now, if my supplier is missing from the list, I can actually enter it directly from here, and it would be entered to the list of suppliers and added to the form itself. So I don't need to leave my form in the middle, lose data, go add a supplier, come back, retype all the data. Now for the contact person, I'm not using this inline approach. I'm actually using a pop-up because I have more information to fill out than just the name. So we have the option of doing either one of them. Now let me push some illegal information into here and try to save. So you see that we're actually validating both the phone and the email, and we are validating using patterns. So in this case, if I replace this with an actual phone number that looks legal, it's actually going to allow me that, but it still does not allow the email because again, it's not a legal email. Now you can validate any column based on patterns. We have pre-built patterns such as phone numbers and emails. We also have the ability to support any regular expression, so you can put in your own patterns. We can also validate using comparison to other columns. For example, this end date must be greater than the start date. We can also validate according to conditions. So for instance, only run this validation rule when this and that columns are equal to this and that values. Okay, great. So once we are done creating, putting in this supplier in contact, we can start with the items. So in our case, the line items are actually stored in an external, the price list is actually stored in an external non-SharePoint database. So whenever I open up this entry form for the line items, and I select a category, for example, media, it's actually going to this database and it brings back all the products that belong to this category. So for example, let's say Blu-ray. And then when I click on get, it's actually going to go again back to this database and bring back all the additional information that we want, such as list price. So I click on get and you see that it brought both the name and the unit price. I'm gonna put it in, I'm gonna put in, for example, an amount, and when I click on save, it's going to bring this information, put it into SharePoint list item, and then link that list item back to the parent. Click on save. Now what's happening here is that I'm able to create child items, sub items, without even having to save the parent item first. This is something that is unique to us. so we can streamline the whole process of filling out this form with all the subforms without having to save it first and then go back, open it for editing, and so on. Okay, so once we're done, we can actually send this purchase order out. Now, because assuming that our supplier does not have access to our internal SharePoint server, we need to export it some way. So we can print it, for example. So we have a print integration directly in here. So when I click on print, it's going to open this item in our own print template. Now you can see that we have our custom header, our custom footer, all the repeating section, all the line items are right here, as well as any color codings, signatures, and barcodes. You can also transform any of your columns into a barcode. Now I can print it directly from here. I can convert it to PDF, and it's going to create a PDF document that's basically identical to what we see on the screen right now. And you can also email it directly from here to anyone inside and outside of your organization. Okay, fantastic. So the next thing that I want to show you is taking the forms and tabs and tab permission one step forward with what we call dynamic permissions. So let me take you to a list of insurances. In this list we have two types of insurances. We have car insurances and we have home insurances. So you understand that they would share some of their information, and they would have distinct fields belonging to each one of them. So let me create a new item. You will see that we only get one tab with the common information. So I put in some kind of a name and so on, and then I select insurance type. So if I select home, I will see home details with all the information that is relevant to homes. If I switch to vehicle, you will see that I get information that is specific to vehicles. So we can easily create fully dynamic forms that change the way the information that they present and the way they work according to the selection made by the user. Great. Okay, so we're done with the forms. So the next step we're taking is business logic, processes. So the first thing that we want to talk about are actions. So what are actions and why are they great? So actions basically allow you to add business logic, any type of operations running behind the scenes whenever, for example, an item is created or edited and so on. And you can do that without having to write a workflow for each small thing. Okay, so let me take you to a list of projects. Now in this list we store the information about the project, and it's a very simple example. So all we need to do is put in a name of a project for the project and some start and end date. So this really doesn't matter. What happens though is when we click on save, these actions are going to be executed. So these actions are actually going to go and create a couple of tasks in a separate task list. One is called generate documentation, the other one is assign resources, and they're going to link those tasks back to the parent project item. We're going to count those tasks. We're going to create a team site, a subsite for this site, and we're going to link it back to the project item. So let me click on save. So when I save, the actions continue running in the background. Some of them are already executed. So for example, I drill down into the tasks. I see that the tasks have been created already. I can refresh this page and I will see that everything basically is completed. So we have the number of tasks and we have the project site already created for us and linked. Now I can also see the history of the tasks, of the actions right here. So I know who executed them when and with what outcome. Okay, so how do we configure something like that? Again, list, design, and here we have actions. So I click on it. Again, this is where you design everything. You don't need any external tools. We actually have 16 different types of actions that you can choose from and create as many as you need. So we can update any type of list item in any list, in any site, in any site collection. We can create new ones. We can delete items. We can copy them. We can send emails. We can run workflows, create lists and sites anywhere, manage permissions for anything from a single item to the whole site. We can run stored procedures in any type of database. We can call any type of web services. We can also manage Active Directory, meaning creating new users, groups, assigning users to groups, and so on. We can automate the printing functionality that we saw earlier. We can calculate summaries of items in different lists. We can run PowerShell scripts, and we can generate associated tasks. Now let me click on one of these actions that we have here and see how we do it. So first of all, in the general settings, we define when the action runs. For example, this one runs on new, but you can also run it on all the other events, and you can also run it on the timer. So an action can be executed, for example, one day before the due date, or every Friday, or every day, and so on. Under advanced settings, we can also specify that the action is executed manually. So it exposes itself as a ribbon button or a context menu item, and you can just click on it and run the action. So you can encapsulate some functionality behind this new ribbon button that you want to add. Under the action settings, this part is specific to the type of action that we selected. So in this case, I'm creating a new item. So all I need to do is specify the list where I want it to be created, and I'm just mapping the fields inside that list to any text or field values from the current item, or some kind of a function that will basically take a value and do something with it. Fortunately, we have this value picker that you can use that will check that for you and add it for you. So in the value picker, you can select from all the columns in your current list and all these functions over here. So for example, to get the year of the created date, you basically do something like this. Very easy. And then click on add. Okay, so that's the create task. Create site is similar but different. Well, everything is the same except for action settings. In here, we basically say the title of the site that we want to create, the description, where it's going to be located, what type of site is that, and so on. We can also add conditions that will execute this action only when specific conditions apply. So you can add that kind of logic in there as well. Okay, so actions are great. They're fantastic. They allow you to do a lot of cool things. They basically can, in many cases, replace workflows and are much easier to develop and to deploy. By simply clicking on save, you already made the action, and it's ready to run. To talk to you about the ribbon buttons that I mentioned. For example, I have this item here, and I want to complete this project. So I can go into the details of the project and do it manually, but I can also expose it as a button. And then by simply clicking on this ribbon button, I'm completing this project, and it's going to refresh the page, and it's going to mark it as completed. Okay, so actions. The next thing that we want to talk about are import. So import is basically the ability to monitor items in an email inbox or database or web service and import those items. Grab the newer items that have been added or updated since the last run and do something with them. We can create new items in any list or document library. We can also update existing items with new information. A good example would be a support ticket system. Another functionality that we want to talk about are the alerts. Now, you've all used SharePoint alerts and you know their limitations. And that's what we were trying to resolve here. So we basically implemented a solution that replaces the need for the built-in alerts and gives you so much more functionality. Okay, so let me just click here on, and we integrate into the all the ribbons and all the places where the regular alerts are, so you can choose to use them directly from there. So general settings are basically easy. Recipients. So when we talk about recipients, you can specify any person, user, domain group, distribution list, SharePoint group, and so on. But you can also specify user and column. You can also specify contact list, and you can also type in. So the users can be both internal, as in SharePoint alerts, but also external, which SharePoint alerts cannot do. Now let me just talk about users in column for a second. Think about the scenario where you would have a list of vacation requests, and each vacation request is targeted towards a specific manager that needs to approve it. Now, if you want to be notified about your employees submitting those requests, you only want to be alerted about your own employees. You don't want to be alerted about somebody else's employees. So by specifying that the recipient is the user in column set, for example, a manager column, that alert would only go to the specific manager that was specified on the particular vacation request form, and not just to everybody who is the manager. And that allows you to, again, minimize the number of emails, but only get the ones that you actually care about. Okay, what to send? Well, we can send when item is added, modified, and deleted, just like regular alerts, but we can also send based on date in column. For example, 2 days before the due date or 1 week after the created date. You can also use conditions. And the conditions are another great feature that allow you, again, to minimize the number of emails, but only get the good ones. For example, think about a list of purchase orders. Everything goes in there from $10 to $100,000. I only want to be alerted when something greater than $10,000, for example, gets added. So I can easily add a condition saying that I only want something that is greater than $10,000, and I will only be alerted about those items. Great. Mail templates. We can generate our own email templates in our own format. Don't have to look anything like SharePoint. We can even reuse them there. So you can have images, you can have links, you have anything absolutely free by simply writing it down in here in this mail template generator and using the columns of your list and all of these functions as well. So you can, again, create and reuse those templates. You can also attach any documents or attachments that the item might have and send it out as well, and so on. So the alerts are fantastic, and they work great also with the input process, so you can have both in and out going emails. Another component that I want to talk about, we actually saw it in action but I never mentioned it, is the ability to have unique IDs assigned to items, such as this one. Again, that is built according to your specification, according to your template, and assigned to each item. In this case, it's PO. Then there are some letters from the name of the supplier, the year, and an automatic numerator. And that would be assigned to the item whenever it's created. So let's see an example of a CRM system based on Ultimate Forms. A user, external or internal, sends an email to a predefined email account complaining about a technical problem. Let's say we have a broken router. And we are sending this email. Ultimate Forms will be monitoring this account, and there will be a timer-based job that will read any new emails that are received in that email account. Let me just run this job manually so we don't have to wait. Once the email is received, it's identified as either being a new email or a new ticket that needs to be created, or is it one of the responses of any of the existing tickets, and they will be handled accordingly. Now we see that we actually received 2 emails back. I'm using the same account both for the customer and for the CRM system manager for convenience, but obviously these 2 emails are going to go to 2 different recipients. So the first one basically lets the customer know that the ticket has been created, and the other one is sent to our manager, the support system managers, again notifying him or her that the ticket has been received, but also requesting additional information for the ticket, such as assigning a category. So basically what I need to do, I need to simply reply with CRM support, CRM sales, or CRM training to assign this category. So I won't be assigning support category, and again sending it back. As you can see, at this point we haven't even looked in our SharePoint, haven't seen what's going on there, but we know that all this interaction is happening through our SharePoint. So let me again run this timer job so we don't have to wait for 15 minutes. That's the default time, and in a few seconds we can go back to our SharePoint list and see what's going on there. So in our SharePoint list, if I refresh it now, we should be able to see our new broken router ticket, and here it is, and it has already been updated with the category as well. So from this point on, we continue working inside the SharePoint list itself. So I'm going to open the ticket for editing. Again, you see the tabbed interface here with the color codings. I see the body of the original email here. All the correspondences are also going to be managed in here as well. And under handling, I can continue with handling the emails. For example, for the ticket, I can assign it to someone. Let me just assign it to one of the users, and specify an estimated due date for the ticket. I can now save it. I can also start assigning tasks to other users. So let's assign a task to one of them. For example, check connectivity, and I'm going to assign it again to user 1. Such as so, and add this task. So now this task is created in a separate list, and again it's linked back to this parent item. So let me click on save now. So now we see that we have one open task here, and we can click here for details and see that task. We can have as many tasks as we want, and we can manage each task separately because it is actually a separate item. So now let's see what additional functionality I have on this list. I actually exposed a set of actions as button here. For example, I could have assigned a category by clicking a button here instead of having to send an email, whichever way is better for me. I can also engage an item, meaning that I can start handling that item by picking it from here and clicking on the action without having to edit it myself. So for example, let me just take both items and say I want to engage them. So what's going to happen is that I am going to be set as assigned to, and the status of these guys is going to be changed to engaged automatically. So I can actually take multiple items and run the action on all of them together. So the next thing I want to do is, let's say I finished managing those items and I want to actually mark them as resolved. Again, I can do it directly from here, clicking on this resolve button. So now what's going to happen here, and in this Okay, so I have a prompt here. It's going to tell me that they're actually open tasks and I cannot resolve this item. So let me try to fix that by simply changing the status of the task to be completed. So that I'm actually going to do in a very simple manner. And you can see here that the task is still there, but it has been completed and the open task number is automatically updated to be 0. So now the system should be happy to allow me to resolve the item. Great, and now it's marked as resolved. And let's go back to our inbox. So we should be able to see a new email here saying that the ticket has been resolved, and it's asking for my confirmation. So I can simply reply to this ticket saying yes or no. So let's say yes, and again it's going to be received by the system, it's going to be imported into the system, and it's going to automatically update the ticket. So let me again run this timer job manually instead of waiting for it to complete. And if now I'm going to go back to the original support list and just refresh it here, it should by now be closed. So let's see how we actually work with something like that. So as you can see here, we have a combination of incoming and outgoing emails, and there's a convention that allows me to know which item corresponds to which email, and it's pretty simple. Just need to set up some kind of a convention here. So let's see the import side of this thing. So if we go to the import settings, we actually connecting to Gmail account, but you can connect to anything you want. Exchange is great as well. Let's see, we actually have 3 actions that run on this account. The first one is simply to create a new ticket. So I click on edit, I'm going to show you. So we're basically mapping values from within the email to the columns in our list. So subject go to subject, body to body. I gave them the same names just for convenience. What I am adding here is a condition saying that the subject should not contain these 2 characters down here. And why it shouldn't? Because the outgoing emails always contain the ticket ID within those characters. So by specifying that I don't want these characters, I can know for sure that we're not talking about a reply to an existing ticket. We're actually talking about a brand new ticket here. So the next action that's we're going to have here is the one that sets the category. And what it, again, in this case, it's looking for a token called category, something like that. We are going to be sending it out using our outgoing emails, and we're gonna see that in a second. Now, because it's an update list item action, we need to tell it which item or items we want to update. So in this case, I'm just extracting the ticket ID from within the subject line, and we saw that the ticket ID is right here inside the subject line. So we're basically extracting whatever is between the hashtag and the column, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So we are basically looking for this part, and then I'm also extracting the first word that comes after the CRM prefix inside the body of the email, and I'm taking that and I'm putting that in the category. Remember, we were requested to reply with CRM support or CRM sales, so we are just taking out, we're finding the CRM part, and we are taking out the word that just came after that, and we are simply putting that word inside the category field. And the third action that we have here, it's called set approval. Again, update action, same kind of condition here. We're now looking for the word approval in the subject line, and we are looking for items that have a ticket ID embedded into the subject line, but also those who are currently resolved to prevent any inconsistencies in data. And again, we are extracting the first word, in this case, from the body and putting it in the approval result field. So this is basically taking care of our incoming emails. So now we are going to take a look at the outgoing emails. For that, we're using our alerting system. And we have a group of those, actually 4. So the first one is simply inform the customer that a ticket is created. So this one is going to be set to run on add new, and it's going to use a template called ticket confirmation. So it's basically our template that we designed specifically for this purpose. And if we click on edit, we see basically that's the email we got with some tokens inside that are going to be replaced with actual values. The same goes for created for the manager. In this case, it's a slightly different template that has the instructions that we saw with CRM support, CRM sales, and so on. Ticket resolved, that's the confirmation request that goes out to the support manager when the status of the support ticket is changed to resolved. And in this case, the email template contains the instructions for how to confirm that the ticket should be closed or reopened. And the last one goes out to the support, to the customer, saying that the ticket has been closed. Now you can see here that the subject line always contains the ticket ID surrounded by the characters that we agreed upon. This is our convention here, and the token that tells us what to do, what type of email it is going to be, so the importing engine will know what to do with the item. So we just going to see here that we actually received the confirmation that the ticket has been indeed closed. So this is an example, very simple system that uses both incoming and outgoing emails to implement a pretty much functional CRM system, and it takes us only a few minutes to configure something like that, but it's still a very, very powerful solution. Okay, so we're done with business logic as well. So now let's go over to reporting. And the first thing I want to talk about is the event calendar. So the event calendar has the ability to combine information from multiple sources, such as any type of SharePoint list, Exchange calendars, and databases, and display them all together in one unified color-coded calendar. So you can have these markings according to data source, according to category, and so on. You can filter by those, by category and by data source, and you can also switch views. You can pick one of 7 available different views from a single day to the whole year. You can also print the calendar, exactly the same technology that we saw earlier, so you can see the print preview, and then you can email it, you can convert it to PDF, and all the functionality that we saw earlier. Again, internal and external recipients as well. Charts. Charts, there are 30-something different types of charts that you can use. You can connect to any list and it will display its data. The great feature about it is that the chart can also be used as a filter for the underlying data. So for example, if I click on the green part here, you will see that only the vehicles will remain. It's filtered. The same goes for the blue. So the chart can send out filters, but it can also receive external filters. So for example, you can create a dashboard with different charts, all of them consuming filters from a filter control, And for example, I change the region in the filter control and all the charts get updated, displaying information from that region. KPIs. So the KPIs allow you to, again, visualize your data. We already saw the color codings, we already saw icons. So in this case, what we're going to see here is a dynamic calculation and display of the information. In this case, it's a budget utilization list. So we have budget, we have actual. So we have a progress bar that basically shows us where we are in terms of actual versus budget. And the state has 3 different icons for below 80%, 80% to 100%, and above 100%, as you can see here. You can download a free trial, 30-day trial of Ultimate Forms from our website. You can also download prefabricated solutions that we've built, and you can use them free of charge and change them as long as you have Ultimate Forms. 15 different solutions. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and thank you so much for taking part of it.